And for Jim Coulthart,
Well done.
airline historian, among other things. I'll let you introduce yourself a little more, but please give him a hand for this morning. We're going to hear about, or this afternoon, Mohawk Airlines.
Thank you. Oop, see if we can do this without falling over here. Thank you, Patrick. Before we get started, I just want to tell you my heart's in history of all kinds. So if you get a chance to join a historical society, preferably here, but wherever you want to, it'll help preserve history for those in the future, and of course give you handy references for things. Now, again, as Patrick said, I'm Jim Coulthart. I'm a local native New Yorker from Oneida, and a self-professed prop head. My real wheelhouse, if you will, is military aviation from the 40s. But I also have programs that I either got in progress or have ready to go about Griffiths related activities. And we're currently working on the 49th history of the 49th Fighter Squadron up to the Griffiths years. So, but you're not here today to hear about that, but I would encourage you to check local listings for what's available. And again, this is good because my wife says go and tell others what you do, because I've heard it all before. So I have a couple of good friends in the audience, and I thank them for making the trek to here. This is, of course, the story of Mohawk Airlines. Before we get to Mohawk per se, there's always a beginning. And the beginning starts down in Ithaca. And the founder of Robinson Airways or Airlines was a Cecil Robinson. And I played heck trying to find a picture of this guy. Apparently not very extroverted, tended to stay among him quietly, but I did finally get a couple of screen grabs of him. Here's a group of local Chamber of Commerce and city officials in Ithaca. That's the airport building back in the it goes back to the 30s, but it's in 1945. And then there's Cecil on the right. Ithaca Municipal Airport was first built next to the Cayuga Lake, where Cass Park is now located. And after the airport moved to its present location in Lansing, which we'll talk about, this became Hangar Theater. So I don't know how many of you get down to Ithaca very much, but this is its afterlife. And I always applaud when old buildings and structures can be repurposed. So a little bit about Cecil's operations. It started out as a Robinson aerial surveying located both in Ithaca as well as in Teterboro, downstate. But during the war, the Civil Aeronautics Board, the CAB, issued a judgment that created a new category of airline. It was called a feeder or local service airline, and its objective was to funnel passengers and goods from smaller communities to larger cities to connect to hubs. One of the early pioneers to take advantage of this was Cecil Robinson. His work with aerial photography before the war had led him to develop a metal spring-like shock mount for his cameras that was superior to the rubber mounts of the day, that became hard and transmitted vibration to the camera. And here's an actual picture of the patent that sort of made Cecil famous and gave him the resources, and particularly with the oncoming war, was used for aerial reconnaissance purposes. And so again, the mounts were made of spun steel and much more flexible than the rubber, which hardened over time. Here's a nice piece on the start of the aerial surveying company. And let's see here, I'm trying to get some of my additional crib notes here. The reason for the air transport between Ithaca and New York City was because the facility for part of his operation was located downstate. And over time, the emphasis of that migrated to Ithaca. And of course, what happened was Cecil, who was an aviator himself and piloted several planes, got tired of stowing away people on his personal transport. So as a result, he went on to create an airline. So, and again, the wartime factory was located in Teterboro. It got a little tedious. And this is a photograph of an aerial photograph of the facility in the downstate area. And to the right there is Fairchild 24. And those were the first planes that he had in his air fleet before it became a bona fide airline. And just sort of a foreshadowing of things here, one of his new hires was a former Navy patrol pilot and lawyer named Robert Peach. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. He was a decorated Navy pilot in the Pacific Theater with 2 DFCs. And at the time he joined Robinson Airlines, he was finishing law school at Cornell. And he also has connections to Hamilton College down the way here. So here's some more interesting information. When things got to be a lot of participation, people coming back and forth between downstate and Ithaca, as the seeds of a airline were germinating in Cecil's head, he also got together with some community leaders, and we're talking Cornell graduates, obviously. So a lot of people wanted to see aviation, no pun intended, take off. So as a result of that, many of them got together, made sure that some farmland was purchased outside of Ithaca proper. And if you ever go down, I believe it's Route 14, and you come through Dryden into Ithaca at the heights, you'll see the airport is now on the north side. There were a lot of folks got together and decided to actually build a bona fide airport that had a little bit more space available to it than just what was down in the city proper. Again, known as East Hill area. Let's see here. At this point, he used some Cessna T-50s. Though, how many of you were let's see, Sky King fans? All right, okay. So Sky King and his plane, and of course his niece Penny, right, and all their adventures. Well, this is the type of plane that was used and in the fleet early on of Robinson Airlines. And then later on, and these are some photographs that I was able to get courtesy of the History Center here. This is, excuse me, a Beechcraft Model 18 or Twin Beech, which was held 6 to 11 passengers. Here's a nice shot I managed to find online of the Ithaca area, and of course Cayuga Lake is there in the background, and I figure that in the foreground must be the, I don't know, what's now the high school or the school complex there, but Again, it's kind of a nice shot that combines the best of all worlds. By the way, Robinson exists to this day. They're located still in the downstate area. And so they still are doing their aerial surveillance and aerial photography and aerial activities in many different areas. So Cecil's project lives on. And it's said, though, that Cecil's laid back style was not necessarily conducive to effective management. So one of the people who supported Robinson Airlines was Edwin Link, who some of you may know, the World War II Link trainer, which was vital to training pilots in World War II. Because it was found that putting people in a plane without any real practical experience was sort of a problem in terms of crashing and things like that. So I'm going to come back on him for a minute here, but if you notice in the far right corner of this group shot of Robinson Airlines, that is Robert Peach. Okay. Again, these pilots don't tend to be the most photogenic, despite what you think about how they're portrayed in Top Gun and things like that. They're full of ego, but not necessarily looking for the spotlight. So here are some early shots I got of Robinson Airlines. Of course, a DC-3 on the left there, and some nice airline schedule early on for Robinson Airlines. And you'll notice that it's leaving the Oneida County Airport, which was the Oriskany location, of course. Edwin Link was born in Indiana, but in 1910, his family moved to the Binghamton area, where his father purchased a bankrupt music firm, Link Piano and Organ Company was what it became known as. And Edwin's experiences, he really wanted to fly. So he obtained his pilot's license, much to his father's chagrin, but his mother supported him in his efforts. And what happened eventually was passion won out. And as a result, Edwin Link took some of his father's old piano cases and whatnot and utilized them to as what would eventually become the Link trainer, and used again extensively for training pilots in the United States and also in Canada. In fact, when we were on a vacation up in Kingston, I came across a Link trainer. And so the upper left-hand corner is the area where as you can see, the center part would be where the pilots, the student cadet was training. And then some different shots of it. And what would happen would be the folks down there in the bottom would give different commands to the trainer, the machinery, and cause it to do different things, and thereby create a safe atmosphere in which different maneuvers could be taught without actually having them crash and learning how to do it. So Link provided one of the problems that was Cecil, again, was not exactly, was a pretty laid back manager apparently. And Edwin Link said he'd be willing to give seed money to allow Robinson Airlines to upgrade to several DC-3s. And by the early 50s, Robert Peach, who was one of his pilots, had risen through the ranks to gain the attention of investors. And he ended up buying Robinson Airlines outright, which assured Link's continued investment. And one of his first acts as head of the airlines was to rename the airline, and that's how it became Mohawk Airlines. Okay, and in 1958, the airline's headquarters were moved from Ithaca to Oriskany County Airport. And it's just kind of a neat little, I like planes. So here are some photographs of the of the airport back in the day. And if anybody has, by the way, I forgot to say this, I'm not a total authority. So, and of course, history is made up of many different perspectives. So if people have new stories or fresh material that I can incorporate into a talk about the airport and the airlines, I'll show a slide at the end so you can take that information. But this is, of course, starting in the upper right-hand corner is the entranceway to the old Oriskany Airport. And then from an airfield shot to at the 10 o'clock spot, and then a photograph of the dining area, the lounge, and then the training center, professional building in the bottom right. So a little bit about Bob Peach. Again, kind of a hard guy to find stuff out about. These are photographs that were taken at various prominent events. The one on the left is for him receiving an award for advancing the cause of regional airports through their trade association. The one in the center honors a Victor Underwood, who I could not find a lot out about, but he was the first president and chairman of the board of Mohawk Airlines. And that was in 1954 that he was elevated to that level. And so this, I presume, is the dedication ceremony of the executive building at Oriskany, at which money was made available by the county to locate it there. Just so you know, it cost $1.5 million to build, and it was on a 25-year lease to Mohawk Airlines. Okay. And I'm not sure if anybody knows who some of these other folks are. I presume they're politicians. Lots of smiles there. I would welcome the additional information.
I saw a person who, in the first photo with Mr. Underwood.
Yeah.
Yes, that photo. The gentleman on the far right, I believe, is Sheldon Storier, who was an early leader of WKTV Utica.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. So we'll pick it up here. We'll go double back a little bit here on Bob Peach. He was born in Syracuse, graduated from Hamilton College in '41, entered law school in Chicago in the fall of '81, but left to go do his duty in the Navy. He commanded a squadron of patrol planes, and he compiled the Distinguished War Record, again, 2 DFCs and other decorations for valor. So I felt incumbent to not only mention Cornell, but Hamilton College, since I worked for a couple of years in Clinton. Here, apparently, one of the things he's credited with, first of all, the PB-2Y Coronado was the plane that he flew, was the pilot of. Now, he is credited with the shoot down of a Japanese medium bomber. Now, I don't know how you shoot down, and if you're the pilot, it's going to be somebody who shot it down for you, I would think. But there it is nonetheless. And this is what was recorded in the history books, and his his unit was VPB 13, Patrol Bomber Squadron, during the war. So following the war, he resumed a study of law at Cornell, and then he was looking for a part-time job, and Peach seized upon the opportunity to return to the cockpit while getting enough money under the GI Bill to further his law studies. So here are some interesting photographs I was able to secure of Robinson Airways, Mohawk Airways in the early days in Ithaca. And I thought it would just be kind of an interesting spread to put some of these in here. Obviously in the hangar down in Ithaca. It would be interesting to know the chap in the upper left-hand corner there in that photograph. But talk about your archetypical pilot, you know, good looking, nothing's gonna go wrong. And of course, they must be drilling some escape procedures, bottom left, and of course the unsung but very necessary cleaning crews for the airline. A nice winter shot there. And just so you know, if you wanted to go anywhere or many places in the Northeast, there were some notable folks who used the airline to get around. And if you look real close, third from the right, there is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., where he is in the, that was me, I touched it, sorry, where he's at the Ithaca Airport. And that's in April '61. So the other thing I found out as I'm doing the history of Mohawk Airlines is they dabbled briefly in a number of innovative areas. I did not know, for instance, that they had a helicopter service that went between New York and Catskill area resorts. Did not succeed. There's a photograph of of one of their fleet that did that, and of course a poster describing the availability of a helicopter lift. Peach pushed for an increase in the usual subsidy of the Civil Aeronautics Board to give local service airlines. It was a role that raised Peach's prominence in the airline community as he advocated for the smaller regionals, and they had a subsidy that were given to airlines for routes that they flew, and Peach pushed for the CAB to increase that subsidy because airlines like Mohawk, Allegheny, Empire were, struggling to make things work. And it allowed for the creation of the trunk system. So in 1962, the airlines under Peach's leadership grew tremendously, and this culminated in him winning the fight over a permanent Civil Aeronautics Board support of a regional lines. And in '65, the Mohawk BAC christened Ohio, which is a British Air Corporation, Aeronautics Corporation, flew its first revenue service. And then other planes at this time that were used were the Fairchild Hiller FH-22, which I've had some people tell me was actually nicknamed the Fairchild Hiller Killer because there were a number of accidents. Some other interesting memorabilia from that era. There's a nice ticket and some screenshots that I secured off net, and that's a Hiller right there in the lower right-hand corner. So things were going along pretty good. Shortly after this, though, Union Air traffic controllers staged an industry-wide shutdown to protest inadequate staffing and excessive overtime. Sound familiar? Working to the letter of the rules, air traffic backed up around numerous choke points, which led to in the Northeast. And from July through August, PATCO action proved disastrous to many airlines. And here's a 1970 route map for Mohawk Airlines. And I'm not sure how well you can make it out, but Mohawk covered pretty much the East Coast. On the north end of things, you can see Montreal. In the south, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and must have been by connector, you had Detroit and Toronto. So again, they were serving the public fairly well. Some other firsts that were credited to Mohawk Airlines and under Bob Peach's leadership, Ruth Carroll Taylor was the first Afro-American flight attendant, you can't say stewardess now, to fly in the United States. And so that was in itself a ceiling breaker. And she was born in Boston to Ruth Irene Powell, a nurse, and Bill Taylor, a barber. And when she went on to get her education at Elmira College, nursing, she graduated from nursing and was a registered nurse. And then after a couple of years of serving as a nurse, she decided to break the color barrier and became the first airline stewardess of Afro-American descent. Ironically, only after 6 months of breaking the barrier, Taylor's career ended due to another discriminatory measure, the airline's marriage ban, a common practice among airlines to the day of dismissing a flight line attendants who became either pregnant or married. So she lives on, she's still alive. She's 91. And here's some, there's a current picture of her on the center and to the right. And homage is paid to her in some street art. So I thought that would be kind of interesting to put in the presentation. In 1961, the Mohawk Airlines instituted a computer-based reservation service utilizing UNIVAC computers. This is sort of a personal intersection for me because my uncle Dave Terrell worked at Mohawk Airlines in the 60s, and he was in the data processing department. Eventually relocated to the Washington, D.C. area to climb the corporate ladder at Mohawk, which eventually became, of course, U.S. Air. The other thing that innovation that happened was it became the first airline regional airline to use flight simulators of a more sophisticated level than what were used at the time. I don't know who the gentleman is in the center, but I thought, who is it? Oh, thank you, Alan. Oh, fantastic. Thank you. I'd like that information. We've identified this person, Alex Gilberti. Alan Gilberti. Okay. Thank you very much. Gee, you find stuff out here. This is great. But the idea was, and surprisingly enough, wink, wink, this was a Link product. So the corporation connection with Link and Edwin Link goes back a long way. It also pioneered regional use of pressurized airplanes. So why do you need a pressurized airplane? Well, it helps keep your passengers alive above a certain altitude in the 32 to 38,000 feet where the air is too thin to sustain human life, and otherwise they'd pass out and hypoxia would set in, and that all kinds of stuff. Plus, as you gain altitude, that allows the plane to move quicker using less fuel to keep it aloft. So, and then let's see, again, I mentioned the fact that they upgraded their fleet to the British Aircraft Corporation BAC 111. in 65 and became the first regional airline to inaugurate jet aircraft service. And by 69, all the piston engine aircraft had been retired from the fleet. On modernizing the fleet, in the early 50s, General Claire Chennault, who some of you may recognize that name as being head of the famous Flying Tigers in the China-Burma theater, offered to sell five Convair 240s, which is pictured right there, the type, after a lengthy battle with Hong Kong, because again, Claire Chennault was very much involved with the Chinese nationalists, I believe, as opposed to the Chinese communists. The modern airlines were in superb condition and were part of a fleet that had been claimed by a Peking regime after it came to power in 49. So some of them got bought by other entities, but Mohawk got some of them. And while awaiting the arrival of the jets, Mohawk had a series of outstanding years that surpassed even Peach's most optimistic projections. In 1962, the airline
of Mohawk jets, the airline had a number of outstanding years that surpassed even Bob Peach's best expectations in terms of traffic and other metrics. In 1962, the airline flew 206 million passenger miles, the highest total in the local service industry history at that point. And in 1966, Mohawk recorded a record 423 million passenger miles. And during the same 5-year period, the rapidly growing airline posted total operating profits of 10.6 million. This came out at the same time when the subsidy payments decreased from 4.3 million in 1962 to 3.2 in 66. As Bob Peach later remarked, these were Mohawk Airlines' golden years. And I have to take a moment now and talk about something that's a bit risque, but beneficial and profitable. And that is the inauguration and operation of something called their gaslight service. To make the airlines more appealing to high-paying customers, i.e. business people, businessmen, I should say, Mohawk dressed up the interiors of a couple of aging DC-3s to resemble a Victorian parlor. They added red velvet curtains with gold tassels, Currier and Ives prints. And they even had carriage lamps. The flight attendants, stewardesses at that point in time were dressed in gay 90s costumes with sequins and ostrich feathers and 5-cent cigars, free beer, cheese and pretzels. At first, the airline allowed only men to fly on the gaslight service because the airline felt it would be inappropriate for women and children to be exposed to that, and the idea that the smells and flavors of cigars and free beer might be a bit much. They stressed that women and children were, of course, welcomed on all of Mohawk Airlines' other flights, and Mohawk claimed that they didn't want to lose any women passengers because the gaslight services were scheduled. Businessmen filled the seats, but the women disagreed and charged discrimination, and eventually Mohawk bowed and boxed off a family parlor in the front part of the planes. And as you can see by the slides here, there's the risque, cover your eye, avert your eyes if you have a problem seeing this. but it was quite the moneymaker for the airline. And I'm just looking to see here what they harvested in terms of income. The times of the price and wage fix setting and whatnot like that. And so economic reality caught up to the airline industry as well. Who doesn't have fond memories of sitting gas lines and things like that? So to save costs, many local carriers were handing off services to smaller cities to commuter lines. So, and to make things worse, at Mohawk, the pilots saw an outsourcing to commuter airlines as a threat to their jobs. One strike before midnight on 12 November 1970, the pilots went on strike after failure of negotiations, and the debts that Mohawk incurred upgrading to the more modern jet and turbo prop aircraft were piling up after declining traffic. So management turned down a small New York City aviation consulting firm to assist with a turnaround, or excuse me, they turned to a small aviation consulting firm. Nothing good ever comes with consultants. The firm was something called Jet Capital, founded in '66 by two Harvard business graduates, Frank Lorenzo and Bob Carney. Lorenzo met with Bob Peach on numerous occasions, and Jet Capital offered a Mohawk restructuring plan that essentially resulted in Lorenzo controlling Mohawk Airlines. At the time, he was only 30 years old, and his plan to take over Mohawk Airlines was deemed too much by Robert Peach. And instead, Robert Peach basically said, I don't like this. It's not going to happen. And in fact, I'm going to turn over control to Allegheny Airlines, my avowed competitor. So on April 20th, 1970, Peach had lunch with Frank Lorenzo, thanking him for his service and explaining that the board had decided to sell to Allegheny. And after lunch, Robert Peach went home to prepare for a speech he was to give that night. And unfortunately, in the process, he terminated his life, killed himself by gun. The sale of Mohawk Airlines to Allegheny left Jet Capital still flush with the 1.5 million seed money it had from the initial stock offering. Here are the pictures of Robert Carney and Frank Lorenzo within the past 10 years. And Mohawk Air, here's a couple of pictures I had of in the day. There on the far left is Robert Peach Jr. and Bob Peach Sr. And this is on the right is his actual tombstone. He was interred at Hamilton College Cemetery. So on April 12th, 72, it was the Mohawk Airlines was transferred to Allegheny Airlines, which changed its name to US Air and later became US Airways. After merging in 1975 with American West Airlines, US Air suffered financial difficulties, only eventually bought by American Airlines in 2015. So there's a nice montage of the different evolution of Mohawk. And now a bit of word here about some of the notable accidents that have happened. Flying was, and will always be a very dangerous proposition potentially. Things are much better than they used to be, but there's still the potential there. Locally here on the far left, and this is a photograph that I was able to get from the Clinton Historical Society of the crash just off the Oriskany located airport of Flight 31. It had a blown engine shortly after takeoff, and the left wings hit trees, and the plane cartwheeled. 13 passengers and 3 crew were killed. There's a observer dispatch photograph of that accident scene. And an interesting note here, I don't know if anybody in the audience knows, let's see here, Gil Goering, but his father Red, who was very active in the fire department in Clinton, is in the scene there somewhere. And July 2nd, 1963, Mohawk Airlines Flight 121 crashed on takeoff from the Rochester Monroe Airport, and killing 7 people and injuring 36. The aircraft, the Martin 404, attempted to take off into a heavy thunderstorm. And here's some photographs. Again, some are newspaper, some are online photographs. That's an actual picture of a Martin 404 done up in the colors of Mohawk Airlines. And another severe accident happened in '67 when the BAC Discover America crashed in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania on a flight from Elmira. It departed on a scheduled flight to Washington National Airport carrying 30 passengers. After takeoff, crew was cleared to climb. Airplane went into a nose down attitude, plunged the earth, and created an explosion outside of Blossburg, Pennsylvania. The aircraft disintegrated. The cause was found to be a valve failure in the auxiliary power unit that resulted in a fire. So let's see here. Another crash happened. This is a Fairchild Hiller. This was in Lake George area or Glens Falls. They climbed to a given altitude and had been cleared for VOR, visual approach to runway 19. The wind was such that it pulled them over into a mountain area, and the probable cause for this accident was that the captain, while conducting an approach, exceeded his clearance limits and flew the plane directly into the severe lee of the mountain downdraft. So no evidence was found to explain this particular approach, why this particular approach was attempted. In March '72, 2 crewmen and 14 passengers were killed in Albany. The plane had engine problem. They were not able to feather the left engine properly, and as a result, it got pulled in. By the way, our son and daughter-in-law live about 3 blocks from where this happened in 1972. So and he said, "Dad, I found the location." I said, "Interesting." So I want to take the time now to thank the Oneida County History Center and for all of their assistance in providing information for this. And again, they've done a great job. Patrick has done a great job of putting out some memorabilia over there. And I can also tell you that if you ever go to Hancock Airport, they have now a regional transportation museum that you can go in and see the flight history and actually transportation history of everything pertaining to Syracuse. But there's a really great section pertaining to Hancock in the 40s and 50s, and of course, some Mohawk Airlines memorabilia there. But we're not done yet, okay? I will tell you that there's always a reason why one gets interested in things. And mine was a personal interest in Mohawk Airlines because the Coulthart family getaway happened in 1965 to a little something called the World's Fair, okay? And so I have to share this with you. And there's at least one person in the audience, I don't expect this to be used as blackmail in the future. But so here are some photographs from the World's Fair, and here is the here's the family. And Coulthart's my mom and dad, Steve and Virginia on the far left there, and in the center top is my older brother Ken, some guy I know second from the right, my younger brother Andrew, and my sister Patty. And these were pictures that were taken from Dad's 35 millimeter slide set from that actual trip. So just wanted to share that with you. And so at this point, I want to thank you for your attention. And again, I make the offer that if you have additional information, I know some people have come to me before the talk, I would be happy to speak with you, set up some sort of confab, and there's my contact information. I'd be happy to do that. Yes. So I guess we're going to do Q&A right now. Oh, okay. We have a nice young lady in the audience. Your name? Teresa McFadden. Oh, fantastic. So this is oh my Lord. Okay. Mhm. Oh, fan- oh, okay. Wow, I'm salivating here. Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. There's too much for me to relay to the folks online, but a treasure trove of information about the establishment of the Oriskany County Airport and her personal experiences, family experiences, flying Robinson Airlines and eventually Mohawk Airlines. So thank you very much. Anyone else? Yes. Yeah. Okay. If it's currently probably the best way to locate it is it's in the town of Oriskany, and probably the thing that you would know now, say this, the Oneida County Jail is nearby where the old airport facility used to be. And I know the buildings are still standing, many of them, but it's a sort of at a and correct my memory if I'm wrong, somebody here, but if you continue on the road that would take you from Route 69 to the airport, it's a cul-de-sac road. In other words, it sort of ends at what would have been the old airport. Airport. Well, geez, that's what it's Airport Road. Yep. So, anybody else? Oh, I got one in the back there. Why did the airport move to Griffiths? My guess would be that the cost of maintaining, and I was working for the Chamber of Commerce in Utica, so I have a little bit of information about this. The cost of maintaining the airport, if you didn't have a regular commuter line supporting it with sufficient volume, would be probably why when of course between that and demise of Mohawk Airlines probably gave you a good indicator as to why it was moved to Griffiths, because they had a facility there with a longer runway and all the infrastructure they needed. So that would be an intelligent guess. I can tell you that when I was there at the Chamber of Commerce, there were numerous attempts to get people to use the airport more often. Yeah. Oh, okay, great. Yeah, we're getting some firsthand intel here. It was very active as a fixed base wing operator. Yeah. Right. And the thought was that the Oneida County Airport, the runways were not necessarily good enough for commercial regular. No. Right. So I guess on top of it all, there is the nasty monster of how sausage is made politically, that led to the demise of Oriskany as part of it, economics and part politics. So thank you for that. Thank you for that additional information. Yes. No, I am not. Okay. Did make it. Yeah. Jerry had some some experience with that as well. Well, anybody else? I thank you for your time and attention, and I'll be hanging around, so be happy to chat with folks and get some particulars from you as to who to be in touch with and things like that. So thank you very much. I don't want you to lose your photograph.
I'm just checking the chat. There were some questions in the chat, but I think you clarified them.